Hi, my name is Fabian, and I'm the founder of Bare Bones Yoga. This is my dog, Bailey Rose. I'm here today to give you some tips to practice safely and with steadiness during your yoga practice. These tips are anatomically based, so maybe this will be a little bit of new information for you about how the anatomy of the human body works as we do different things like practice yoga. The first tip has to do with avoiding allowing your knee to protrude way past your heel when you're in a lunge. So this would be in a shape like a crescent lunge, for instance. As the knee starts to go way past the heel, not only does it get a lot less steady, but it increases the pressure on the kneecap due to the arrangement of your quadriceps, the muscles in your thigh, and how they all converge together into one tendon that inserts around the kneecap. So for greatest steadiness and still maximum stretch, we want to try to keep the knee over the heel to stay steady and safe. The second thing has to do with avoiding what's called a sway back when we do a lunge. So as the lower back can be pretty flexible versus the middle part of the back, which is really stiff in most people, when we come into something like a lunge, sometimes we can puff the chest out and just kind of sit in the lower back. You never really want to sit into a joint, whatever kind of joint it is. So in order to avoid something like this, which really also gets in the way of stretching the hip flexor muscles, we want to try to pull the belly in and actually relax a little bit under the chest to keep more length in the spine and less bend. The next thing has to do with locking the joints. Some people have what's called hyperextendability in their joints. They can actually go beyond straight. We want to try in different poses, especially as it relates to the elbows and the knees, to try to stay out of locking the joints, which is almost as bad as just sagging in the joints. Stay more in the muscle. So in something where we're on one leg, not trying to lock for stability, but actually trying to use the muscles that surround the joint to create stability instead. The next thing has to do with pressure in the lower back that can happen as we let the knees go wide, especially when we're trying to extend the hips or bend the back. So this comes up a lot in a pose like bow, where we're laying on the belly and we're grabbing the feet. We're trying to stretch the hip flexors, but if they're tight, sometimes we can end up sticking our knees out as we're trying to press back. So really trying to keep the knees in line with the hips, pushing down into the ground with the hips as we press back into the legs, and trying to avoid the knees sticking out to the sides. The next thing has to do with shoulder joints. Allowing the shoulders to go way below the elbows as we move into a little push-up, and then swooping up into upward dog can create undue pressure on the muscles that surround the shoulder joint, the deltoid and the muscles of the rotator cuff. So trying to keep a little more steadiness as we come forward, even staying a little bit above elbow level as we lower. The next thing has to do with the knee joint. And as we work poses like pigeon, avoiding maybe the tendency or curiosity to allow the shin to go way forward, especially if in order to get there, we have to actually come out of the pose. We want to try to keep the pelvis more squared towards the ground and keep this knee in front of the hip. If you can bring the shin a little forward, great, but remembering that the best way for the knee to move, the steadiest, safest way, is front to back. It does move side to side or laterally, but it just can tend to increase some pressure on the medial side, the interior aspect of the knee. So we want to try to just be really gentle as we take different movements that require we move the leg, the shin, from side to side. The next thing has to do with trying to keep pressure down between the vertebrae of the back. As you know, as you probably know, in between each bone of your back is a disc. And as we hang forward in different shapes and round a lot, we actually push the disc material back towards the back of the body. So as we fold forward, even if you got tight hamstrings, you want to try to allow the chest to fold forward comfortably towards the thighs, bending the knees and lifting the sitting bones up as you do. and this will keep the pressure down between the bones onto the disc. And as you come up, just think about coming up with a little bit of a straighter spine instead of rounding so much. And the last thing has to do with allowing the feet to turn out when we try to do back bends. So if we were to do something like upward bow, or commonly called wheel, or even if you were to just stand up and try to bend back a little bit, avoiding that urge, which sometimes we have to externally rotate the thigh bones or turn the feet out, and instead keeping the thighs internally rotated. This will broaden the lower back. The sacroiliac joint here can narrow as we roll the toes out and try to go back. And this can create a lot of pain in the lower back as we do things like back bends. So those are some tips to keep your practice safe and steady. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. Check out my website, barebonesyoga.com. Namaste.